Hello, and welcome to Transurf and Chill on TransurfingTV. This is the show where I'm going to be interviewing Renee Garcia about literally every single concept in reality transurfing and breaking it all down for you. Really excited to be bringing this show to you all, so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the queen of transurfing, Renee Garcia. All right, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Awesome.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. I'm thinking this series is going to be really, really good, and it's been a lot of fun to chat with you about these topics.
Yes, I love talking about this stuff, and I've talked about it enough at this point that there is not a single sentence in the book that eludes me. I mean, I totally get this stuff from front page to end page, so I love talking about it.
Yeah.
So I'm happy we're doing this.
Yeah, it's probably about time for you to have recorded it so that you don't have to continue talking.
Yes.
But I totally get it, and I think it's so cool that you're still passionate about it even after going through it so many times. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh yeah, I love it. So yeah, this is part of my heart and mind coordination. I mean, any opportunity I get to talk about transurfing is a good day. So I love it.
Awesome. So we're going to talk today about pendulums and why they're good for you.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, huh? I mean, yeah.
I don't know how to respond. I'm just going to let you take it.
Yeah. So when I first started doing the seminars for the International Academy of Personal Development by Dr. Salah El-Rashad, he told me, he was like, okay, so there's been some misinformation here in the Arabian world with the topic of pendulums. There were some instructors initially. I'm not going to name any names, but there were some instructors there right when the book came on the scene, and Dr. Salah El-Rashad translated it. So right when the book came on the scene, there was a massive transurfing explosion, of all kinds of people that were interested. And there were a few instructors there trained by a particular person. I'm not going to name any names again, but what happened was the instructors were telling the people that pendulums were bad and they needed to be avoided at all costs. And what had happened is it actually turned a big group of people into borderline agoraphobics, right? Like people that didn't want to interact with their environment because they didn't want pendulums on them, and pendulums were bad, So my first line of duty personally, when I started giving these seminars for the academy, was to debunk essentially what people there had been led to believe, that pendulums were bad for you. So here's the thing. Pendulums are neither good nor bad. It's just how they serve you. Okay, so an example that I like to use. I used to be addicted to media, right? I'd go into CNN 20 times a day, and if there was something crazy that happened, like a bombing or some big current event, I would be tuned in all the time, right? So the pendulum of media was actually really bad for me because I was tuning into it countless times a day, yet it wasn't giving me anything other than, this sort of like sensation that I was plugged into something or connected to something, but it wasn't actually benefiting my life anyway. Now, the flip side of that, the example that I use is let's take a person that wants to get into photojournalism, right, or journalism, or become a news anchor or whatever. That media pendulum means to them something different than it means to me. because that media pendulum is helping that person achieve their goal. And especially if they're going towards a good goal for them, going through their doors, and they've got coordination, right? Then the media pendulum is ultimately good for them. So any pendulum that you encounter in your everyday reality, you have to stop and ask yourself, is this good for me, or is the pendulum getting a better deal than I'm getting? Okay, so going back to my analogy of me being hooked up into the pendulum, when I found transurfing, the media pendulum, when I found transurfing, what I decided to do was take a look at all my pendulums and sort of do like a checks and balances, right? Is this pendulum giving me enough for me to continue giving it what it wants, right? And if the answer was no, then I would simply renegotiate the deal, right? So then I thought, okay, I'm not looking at CNN every day. Like, I'm just not. Can I look at it once a day, right? So then I would look at it once a day, and still that felt like too much, and it would hook me in. Okay, so can I look at it once a week, right? So CNN didn't have any problem with that, right? It's a mindless entity, right? I could renegotiate the deal with looking at CNN, and I could take back some of my energy for myself, plug in just enough so I felt like I understood what was going on in the world, and CNN didn't have a problem with that. Now, sometimes pendulums do have a problem with you renegotiating the deal. You can't go to your employer and be like, hey, listen, this isn't working for me anymore, right? I want to renegotiate this deal. Your employer is going to be like, no, that's not going to work for us, right? So you need to figure out, can you renegotiate that deal? And if you can't renegotiate the deal, then there are two things that can happen. Then you either need to accept that you're in the deal with the pendulum in the ways that you can't fight against necessarily with certain ones, or you need to figure out a way to detach from the pendulum altogether. So when I first got into transurfing, I started to think like, the what Dr. Slaw had told me about, like pendulums were bad, but pendulums serve our environment a purpose that I don't think most people have ever experienced on a level like I have. Pendulums are what give us all energy. It's what keeps the world going, right? Every single pendulum you can imagine, it is providing. Now it's asking for stuff. Sometimes it's asking for too much, but it's providing the adherence with energy. And how I actually found this out is a couple of years ago, before I bought my home where I live now, I decided that I wanted to really just put myself in an environment where I could work on my own projects, where I wouldn't be distracted. So I rented a house on 100 acres of land outside of Yosemite here in California. And the house was on a hill, and when you stood up on top of the hill, you could look in a 360-degree circle and not see one other house or one other person. It was completely out there. It was isolated from humanity, from everything. So I thought this was great. I thought I'm going to be able to get so much stuff done. Little did I know, a month into it, I was like the laziest human being ever. I couldn't get motivated. I couldn't do anything. There was nothing around me. There was no vibrancy, right? There was no, I wasn't interacting with people. Ideas weren't flowing. I wasn't getting inspired. I had ultimately joined on to a pendulum that had a very adverse reaction to what I thought was going to happen. But the bottom line is that I realized that living around people, seeing things happen, becoming inspired by things you see or hear, groups for whatever. I mean, I walk on this trail every morning with my dog first thing in the morning, and I've made it a point that when I walk, every single person I pass by, I smile, I say, how are you doing today? And, strike up conversations with people. That energizes me, right? It helps me feel connected with my environment, connected with the people in my community. So I learned, and this is my own personal experience, maybe you would have another one, but I learned that really getting rid of all the pendulums in my reality, I essentially, was putting a tourniquet on the energy that was coming in my direction via the pendulums of life. So again, it's not about getting away from them. It's about acknowledging, is the deal good for you, right? Are you getting at least what you're putting in, right? In the direction of this pendulum? Or if it's not, it's time to renegotiate the deal. And if you can't do that, then it's time to move on. Maybe then you need to eradicate whatever pendulum it is out of your life. So that's more or less Pendulums 101 for me. Now again, it could be different for somebody else, but it definitely, pendulums are definitely not something that I'm looking to eradicate from my reality. I'm just choosing my pendulums wisely.
Yeah, I think he even mentions that in the book, that if you do eradicate all pendulums, you go in, I can't remember what the term is off the top of my head, but it's like you go into this like very isolated place where there's really not a whole lot, like going on. And so you're saying that, so like the media example, for instance, the person who works for the media company, that pendulum, they want that pendulum to light them up, right? So that's how he says it in the book. But if you're somebody who is a consumer of media, it might be a little bit different, depending on your relationship to that. Now, can we backtrack just a little bit for people who don't really understand yet what pendulums are, and start talking a little bit about what they are and how they become what they are as pendulums themselves?
Yes. So pendulums are an energetic entity that starts with people that are thinking in the same direction. Okay. Then what happens when a pendulum is formed, and this is an outer pendulum. After this, I want to describe a little bit more what an inner pendulum is, or a personal pendulum, as I put it. But so an outward pendulum is an energetic entity that has a group of adherents that all are resonating at the same frequency, and it is perpetuating this entity that becomes like a living, breathing, moving, functioning thing. And then over time, it can grow because that energy attracts like energy. So, obviously we could use politics here, right? As an example, the media and politics. That pendulum, when it started, let's take a specific political party, right? Let's say liberals, right? When that liberal pendulum started at the very, very beginning, it was most likely just a couple of people having a conversation, and then they're having a conversation, and a third person hears that conversation and goes, "Oh, that's a great idea. and then they're having a conversation, and then it continues, and it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. It gains and attracts more and more individuals that agree with that resonating frequency and agree with whatever that pendulum is advertising. And what happens is a person hears that, and then they get something. So in the case of a political party, right? A person could hear that, and they could say, "Oh wow, well that sounds like a really good idea, and it makes me feel like I'm a part of something," right? Here's the shitty part, though. And this is where pendulums can ultimately be really, really bad for you. Let's take, again, the media pendulum, because it's a big one right now. When you tune in to CNN or MSNBC or whatever, whatever bullshit you decide to tune into.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Here's the shitty part about that. That pendulum has gotten so tricky and so good and so manipulative. They will just give you the sensation that you tuning in is going to help, right? But here's the interesting thing about the media pendulum. Media is at an all-time, it's on fire, right? It's attracted a lot of energy. So if tuning in is supposed to help people, right? You got to be aware and you got to be on board. If tuning in is supposed to help people, then why, and I mean, I'm not perceiving things as getting worse, but collectively, if you were to ask everybody in the United States, are things getting worse? Everybody would go, oh yeah, they're getting worse for sure. But why is it then? Because I thought the media is trying to pitch that if you tune in, you're aware of what's going on, the border crisis and all this stuff. So then why is it getting worse then? Because it's just an illusion. It's just a trick for the pendulum to get you to hook up to it. You're not doing anything. In fact, you're actually making matters worse. And this is how you're making matters worse. One, you're not doing something with your energy that is actually producing something positive. And two, you're agreeing with the resonating frequency of the media pendulum, which is really, really fucking low. So one, you're not helping, and two, you're contributing to the problem. And this is with any massive pendulum that gets you to believe that if you don't tune in, you're not doing your part, right? And that's what the media wants everybody to believe right now. Oh, you got to do your part. You got to stay aware. You got to tune in, and you got to know what's happening. And you got to hate on certain people that don't believe the same things that you do. And let's get all fired up. And, oh, you saw something on MSNBC? Okay, we'll go on Facebook and post about it and see if you can, if you can get that pendulum swinging too. It's a vicious, vicious cycle. But the bottom line is, none of that stuff you're tuning into is actually helping you as an individual. It's taking away your energy. It's taking away your ability to think for yourself in the direction that ultimately is better for you and your reality. You have become a puppet in that scenario, right? So that's where pendulums absolutely 100% are bad. Now if you want to become a photojournalist and go and travel the world and get into war zones and take epic pictures that you're going to come back to the US and sell to CNN, then that's cool, right? then you're getting something. If that's your divine purpose, if that's your ultimate purpose, then you're getting something. But if you're not getting anything, then it's time to renegotiate the deal for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I mean, so whenever we're paying attention to some pendulum that somebody else created, we're not creating our own energy, and we're just giving our energy away to basically someone else's idea or someone else's cause, and not edifying ourselves. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. I mean, here's the thing though. There are some times when I will, let's say I'm like yesterday, I'm sitting at the dentist's office. I'm waiting for my appointment, and I've answered all my emails. I've done everything that I can do for the day. I've done all my real estate stuff. I've done all my transurfing stuff. I've done stuff for my other businesses. Everything's kind of like chill. And I got 10 minutes. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm going to look at something on my phone that I typically wouldn't look at, right? Like I'm going to go on to TMZ. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm going to go on to TMZ. Okay. So I, at that point, am allowing myself to participate with a pendulum that is not going to give me anything. So I've agreed that I'm going to do a deal with this pendulum, right? I'm going to give my next 10 minutes of energy to the TMZ pendulum, like one of the most base, just
mindless.
low.
Yeah, just
Yeah. So when I do that though, here's the deal. One, I put a time limit on it, right? I'm going to look at this for 10 minutes, right? That's it. I'm not going to allow myself to get hooked where I go scrolling through TMZ for 2 hours. The other thing is I'm doing it mindfully. That's the main key with being in business with a pendulum, right? Is that you're mindful of what's going on. If it's a pendulum that's serving you, obviously you got to keep in mind that it's serving you well, or serving you equal, like you're getting more out of the deal, or you're at least getting equal. The other thing is, if you're getting involved with a pendulum that you're not going to get a fair shake, do it, but do it with mindfulness and know your limits, right? Know your limits. I'm very, very good now with knowing my limits with pendulums. And, I can be a bitch at times. Like I can be talking to somebody can approach me and I know immediately, okay, this is the so-and-so pendulum. I got 5 minutes on this one, So I'll get involved, right? And I'll sit there and I'll go, yeah, okay, I hear you. And I'll give them what the pendulum's asking for. And then when the 5 minutes is up, it's like, hey, it was nice talking to you, but I got to go now. And I don't even care if they're in mid-sentence, I am very good at like just cutting it off, right? That's it. You're done. You're out of here. So, and the funny thing is like the pendulums, even if it's a individual, they don't even notice. That's the weird thing, People are pretty mindless. The majority of the population are pretty mindless. That individual pendulum that approaches me, that person's just running on some pendulum of their own. And it's like there's a lot of mindlessness going on. So all you really need to do is just be hip to the game, be aware of what's going on. And when you cut something off, they don't know why you're cutting it off. I mean, I don't know, maybe they have a sense, but more or less, I go through my days just like, okay, you get 5 minutes and you're done. Right. And then, okay, I can do 5 minutes of this and then I can do 10 minutes of that. And I'm very methodical in the energy that I give out. But the upside for me is that I have negotiated, with the pendulums that I come in contact daily, and I make sure that the deal's at least equal, if not better. And the cool thing is my energy now produces stuff for me. Right? When I put my energy into something, it produces something for me because I've taken a look at all those pendulums, I've negotiated all those deals, and I have a systematic way of sort of looking at my reality where I'm always on the upswing. I'm always the one benefiting, right? And, it works for me. It takes a little bit of practice, but it works, and I feel good. I don't feel like I ever get myself into a position where I have some interaction with a pendulum and I'm left, just completely, void of energy. And I'm like, oh man, what happened? That used to happen to me all the time, because I'm a pretty sensitive person. My environment used to affect me a lot. Pendulums used to affect me a lot. I'd let somebody talk to me and just drain my energy, and then I'd walk away and I'd be like, oh my God, I need to go lay down for an hour. That never happens anymore, because I've figured out a way to spot pendulums coming at me, and I know how to negotiate the deal. So it's kind of, it's a practice like anything else.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's one point in the book where he talks about engaging in like real news versus like watching like a fictional TV show or something like that. Like I just finished watching Stranger Things. Did I get much out of it? Yeah, probably not, but I enjoyed it. You know what I mean? I personally enjoyed it. I just enjoyed it for the entertainment value of itself, but that's not really connected with any real like pendulum type of thing in our world, as far as like compared to like the media, for instance, and giving our energy to that. Can you touch on that distinction a little bit?
Yeah. So, what I do is I try to look at how a pendulum makes me feel. Right. So, the TV is a great example. TV is a pendulum, obviously. You sitting down and, turning on Netflix for a couple of hours in the evening, it is what it is, right? But you could tune into something, violent or depressing, or something that's going to lower your state of mind, right? Or you could tune into something that's inspiring. Let's say a documentary about somebody that did something cool, right? And you're like, oh man, that's awesome. Like, I was watching a documentary not too long ago about this guy that climbed like El Capitan with no gear. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, no.
Oh yeah, it's really, really crazy. I mean, this guy's fucking insane, right? You're like watching this. Some young kid, he's like in his mid-20s or something, and in a matter of 5 years, you're probably going to hear that he died, right? Because he's free climbing these massive things that experienced climbers climb with full gear and all those bungee things. I don't know the exact terminology, but hooked in with safety, and he's just doing it freestyle, right? So I see that and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. He's doing something different, right? He's tuned into what Vadim calls his soul frail, right? He's found his specific little thing that gives him heart and mind coordination. He's doing it, and it's so interesting that National Geographic wanted to film a documentary about him, right? So that is a pendulum. Watching that documentary is a pendulum where I walk away feeling something, and those feelings are beneficial to my frequency, right? I'm like, yeah, I want somebody to make a documentary about me someday, right? Or something like that, whatever it is. But the idea is that, and I'm not saying that you can't watch a horror movie, right? Just be careful, right? Don't watch something that's going to put some thought in your head that without proper awareness, you can't go, hey, this is just a movie, or this is just, negative information, and that's what it is. I mean, I've watched plenty of things in my life that, have frightened me or made me think about something. When I first moved into my house, I was living by myself here, and, I had spent the last 20 years of my life living in high-rise buildings and lofts that were, had a doorman, and you had to have a key to take an elevator up to your loft in LA. And when I moved here and I bought a house, it was like the first time I'd ever lived in a house as an adult. So, there were multiple points of entry that, in an alley behind my house where people would be out there sometimes walking around and stuff. And then here I am watching, Law and Order, right? Victims Unit or Victims, whatever it's called.
Right.
So then I'm watching these stories of like women, like people breaking into women's houses and like raping and killing them, and then I'm feeling like I have to put my alarm on at night, and I'm waking up multiple times a night, and I'm like, what was that noise? What was that out there? And then I thought to myself, that's it. You can't watch Law and Order anymore. That's a pendulum that you feed your energy into in the evening that is clearly not doing anything good for you. Right? It's putting thoughts in your mind. You're resonating at that frequency. And like Vadim says in the book, you're then putting yourself on that track where that thing can happen, And I was actually thinking to myself, somebody is going to come in here and kill me. Right? So when I think that thought because of something that a pendulum fed me, I am putting myself in the position where that actually becomes a variation, right, that I'm tuning into. So then I need to watch myself. Then I need to check myself. And I'm not saying that I can't watch Law and Order anymore, but I don't need to watch 4 episodes every night. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And sit there and like trip out after I've watched them. Maybe I watch one a week, and I keep my baseline resonating frequency good, right? And then I can go down a little bit, but then I go right back up. But I definitely don't resonate on that frequency permanently, because ultimately that thing will happen, right? I'll start acting like a victim, and then somebody will do something to me. I mean, that's my belief on it, So it's about understanding where the pendulum puts you, where it puts you, and making sure that that's in a good place for you.
Yeah, that's really good. So when we tune into stuff, that's why I like the Transurfing TV slogan is "Change the channel," right? Because we're like a transmitter, we're like a radio state or a radio itself, and then so we can just switch the station to something that hopefully is beneficial. Find that pendulum that serves you, that adds something to you, or is at least neutral, and then tune into that instead of something that's going to take you to a reality that you don't desire to be a part of.
Yeah, transport you to a track where something undesirable happens, Yeah, I mean it's really very simple. If you do tune into a pendulum, like you said, if you do tune into a pendulum that is not doing anything good for you, then that is the channel you're on, right? So yeah, just like you said, you have the option to change the channel, and I think that's why Vadim put these concepts in the order that he did. We just had one of these conversations on the space of variations, right? Everything exists there. So then the next concept is pendulums. There is a reason that they came in that order. So then it's like, okay, so what channel are you going to tune into then? What are you going to resonate with? And again, everything is a pendulum. I mean, if you fall in love with someone, right, and you're deeply in love, and it's a good, healthy relationship for you, and you're getting all kinds of stuff, and it's great, you're still involved with a pendulum, right? You're still involved with a pendulum, but it's giving you something, right? If you find a job that you love, you're still involved with a pendulum, but it's giving you something that means something to you. So I kind of look at my energy on a day-to-day basis like a pie graph or a pie chart, and I choose at any time 3 things that I feed my energy into, right? My family, my boyfriend, and my boyfriend and my dog, or home life, or whatever it is. And then my businesses, right? Whatever businesses are going for me at that time. Now, those are my 3 pendulums that I have deemed worthy of my energy. I put into them and I see an immediate return, right? My boyfriend feels taken care of. My house is clean. My house is beautiful. All my bills are paid. My dog's walked. I've touched base with my family. Everybody's doing good. They know that I'm there for them if I need them. And my businesses are thriving. So those are my 3 pendulums. Now, anything outside of that comes in begging for some attention, I go, no thanks. So like, if somebody approaches me and says, oh, hey, Renee, we're having a local feed the homeless thing down at the park on Friday. Can you make it? Nope. Sorry, I can't. I got 3 pendulums that I'm feeding already. I mean, obviously I don't say that, but you catch my drift, right? Like it doesn't matter what the prestige looks like, or the benefits, or like, oh, you're going to be helping your community, or any of that kind of stuff. I don't care. I chose my 3, and those are my 3 for right now. Now, that's not to say that I don't switch them out sometimes, or that I go, okay, you know what? Maybe I can divide my pie into 4 today, right? And I'm going to feed this thing a little bit. But the bottom line is, my energy, I feel right now, is best served with these 3. So like, my family needs it, transurfing needs it, and my home life needs it, right? And that's where I'm going to feel good about what I'm contributing to my reality, right? I'm helping people in the ways that my heart and mind agree with. I'm doing it in the way that I feel I see benefits, not what my environment tells me or my society tells me that I should, but what I feel like doing, and I just keep it kind of like that. I just go through my day, and it's like, okay, this can have some, and this can have some, and nope, this can't have any. Maybe tomorrow it can have a little bit, but I just maintain awareness around it. That's it. That's the trick,
So it's like thinking about, maybe you have, 3 plants or 5 plants or whatever, but there's infinite plants that you could put your water into, which is your attention, maybe. And then
Absolutely.
You just make a decision. Okay, I'm going to put X amount of my attention into this, pendulum, this pendulum, and this pendulum. And, the water example being your attention, and then the plants being the pendulums themselves.
Absolutely. Great analogy. And you can decide to water other plants, but, you
only have so much water.
You only have so much water. So like, when I see people that are depleted of energy, or they're tired all the time, or, there's some people that I encounter on a daily basis, like in my town, and I can tell that pendulums are just fucking ripping them to shreds, like they don't have anything for themselves. There's no life there. There's no vibrancy. They're not making any choices. They're just feeding pendulums that aren't giving anything back to them. And I can actually see it on them, and I'm just like, oh, wow. Now I don't get involved. Like, you can't get involved, right? Because that would be you getting involved in another pendulum. But pay attention to the people around you. Look at what they're doing, and look at the person, right? And this is part of the reason why I like to go on walks every morning. I encounter a ton of people that I can tell have got it going on, from, college age kids that are on the track team, and I can see them like laughing and talking as they're all running together, or older people right, that haven't experienced the generational shift, and we'll talk about that on another session. But older people that haven't experienced a generational shift, I see light in their eyes, and a hop in their step, and they're out there every day walking, even if they're 70 years old, and everybody's saying hi to everybody else. And it's like, I can tell that some of those older people, they obviously don't know about transurfing, but they've somehow managed to figure it out, that they can live life and be attached to things that are good for them and have a little bit of energy for their day. And you can see it on somebody, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I do.
They're not just zombified puppets. I hate to say it like that, but you can see when an older person has just had the blood sucked out of them by the pendulums in their life. And then you can see the older people that still have that twinkle in their eye. That twinkle in their eye is some energy left, and that's what I strive for. I mean, I want to be that 7-year-old woman that's walking down, the Virginia corridor, like, saying hi to people and stuff. And I got the energy to do that. And I got the energy to be on a walk when I'm 70,
Absolutely. Yeah. I used to work with a guy who, it's not just old people. I see it, this guy was he was 37 years old, which I'm about to turn 37 here next week. But he looked like he was 60. And, he was just depleted and worn out, and he hated everything. He hated his life and was just miserable. God. He wouldn't even tie his shoes, He'd come into work and just be like, literally this guy has told me, less talking, more shoveling, boy. That's the kind of person that he's, I think, gotten a lot better since then, because he finally, decided that, his farm was just it was taking everything from him. It was like taking, he's working 70, 80 hours a week. And I was like, look, dude, I'm not coming in on Saturdays. Like, I basically established my own boundaries. And I said, this is not, this is my job.
You were negotiating the deal.
Exactly.
You were negotiating the deal.
Exactly. Yeah. But he was in no position to do that. And whatever that pendulum of his farm required, he felt like he had to do it. And he was just killing himself. And
wow.
And just completely miserable. And I love the guy dearly, but at the same time, you could say, look, dude, why don't you just consult? Why don't you just, why don't you just instead of having to grow all the trees, you could, be a go-between and a middleman and help people find stuff, and maybe, and if you want to be with your family, be with your family. Cause if you come to work all day and complain about how you're at work and you're not with your family, then you're clearly something's wrong, and this is before I had any knowledge of pendulums or any of that. But the poor guy, he just looked beat to death, and he was 37 years old. He looked like he was 50.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's a trip. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can see it on a person when they, and the saddest part is they have no idea what's even happened to them. They think that's life.
That's being a man,
right?
That's what that is.
That's being a man. Yeah, that's being a man, or it's being a whatever. Right. It's being a good mom.
That's right.
You give everything to your kids. You're being a good mom. It's like, again, getting back to what we were saying the last time we spoke about the common belief. Common belief is you start something, you gotta finish it. Or you're this, or be really, really, really careful about looking at your reality through the quote unquote common belief system, right? Because if you look, go somewhere and sit down and look at the people in your community, right? I remember I actually had a very, very, it was almost a scary experience. I went to meet Vadim Zeland in Russia, and when I left St. Petersburg, I had a stopover back home in in Holland, in Amsterdam. And I was at a new heightened state of awareness. I don't know what happened with meeting Vadim, but my eyes were open even wider, and I was really, really, really seeing my environment. And I was sitting at the airport. I had a couple hour layover, and I was sitting on a bench, and I was looking at the people walking by, you know, droves of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, all, you know, hurrying to get to their flights. And I was looking at the people's faces, and I have to say, it was the first time I'd ever done something like that with this new sort of state of awareness. I was scared what I saw. I saw people that were extremely unhappy. I saw people that weren't in control of their thoughts. I saw people that were resonating at a very, very low base frequency. I saw people that, this is the way that I've started to understand humanity on an individual level, is that, okay, so you're born, right? And you are immediately, not only with your genetics, but with your environment, you are sort of pushed into a certain program, right? So you have your genetic programming, and then you have your environment programming, right? And you go through life, and the programming starts to layer itself on you, right? So this is the kind of person that I am, and this is the kind of person that my parents say I should be, or my so-and-so says I should be, and then this is what my environment or my society asks of me, and this is what's good for me, and this is what's bad for me. And slowly over time, what happens is this programming becomes so thick and so layered on your energy, that you actually start to look different, right? That you can see that programming on people. So let me give you a good example. I live in Modesto, California, which is it's not so much anymore, but back in the day, 10 years or so ago, it was considered the methamphetamine capital of the world, actually. And you can see this information, right? This information that has materialized, this energy here that has materialized, and it has stuck itself onto people, and it is layered on the people. And then you can actually see this sort of collective look that people have that are involved with meth, right? All it is it's a transfer of energy that's crystallized, and it's actually giving some sort of physical, presentation in reality. You can see that with let's say businessmen in New York City. You go to Wall Street, right? You are going to see a very similar type of look, from businessman to businessman. It is the pendulum sort of crystallizing on whatever, group of adherents, and you can see that information on those people. That's why a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you look so young," or "Oh, wow, you're still thin." I mean, where I live, everybody my age is, 50 pounds overweight, and they have 3 kids or 4 kids, and there's just a program that most people have adhered to, a pendulum that people have gotten involved with, and it's made them look different, right? And if you don't follow that, then you have gone your own way, and your brain is functioning on a different level, and you also physically represent sort of being free from pendulums. So I can go out now, and I would suggest anybody to do this. Go out where you live, find a place where there's, people passing by a public place like a, downtown area or a park where lots of people gather, and go there and look at the people's faces and try to see, the common sort of look, and you can see really what it boils down to is they have become adherents to a particular pendulum. That's all.
Yeah, I see it a lot.
It's really fascinating.
I see it a lot here in the town that I live in. It's like this really college town, a lot of hipsters, and then in the film industry, there's a lot of film industry people. They have certain characteristics that are very distinguishing. Most of them have tattoos, full sleeves and stuff like that. And then, restaurant industry people and, but yeah, all the way up the line, like anything you can think of, there's a category for, and people do tend to fall into that category, and they do physically represent what that looks like. It's weird, and it seems like it shouldn't be that way, but
it's super weird. I mean, it's super weird. It's cool when you see, hipsters and stuff, and they're being stylish, or they're, creating new trends or whatever like that. I mean, that's kind of like a positive side of it. But, when you see somebody that is sick, that can barely walk because they're so overweight, right? Or they're, whatever, something bad. I mean, that is just sort of the deepest level of being involved with a pendulum. That is the deepest level. If you cannot walk because you are so overweight, you have bought into, the food pendulum, hook, line, and sinker. You have given it everything. Your thoughts, your health, your physical body, everything. You're screwed. You're screwed at that point. Now, it's not to say that you can't reverse it. You can.
Sure.
But you gotta wake the fuck up.
Yeah, right.
You gotta wake up and realize what you've done, what you're in business with, and renegotiate that deal.
So let's talk about a little bit then what that would look like. Let's say we do find ourselves at the end of a hook of a pendulum, which I have personally many times. And some of them I've been able to break away from. Like, for instance, cigarette smoking was something when I read the book for the first time, I was smoking cigarettes. I thought I would never smoke another cigarette. And one of the things that blew my mind, or I thought I would never quit, but one of the things that blew my mind was how much my thoughts changed after I quit. Like, after a couple of months of quitting, I was like, oh my God, I don't think about a cigarette every 5 minutes. It wasn't even about the smoking. It really wasn't even about the smoking itself. It was about, oh my God, I just freed up so much mental energy. Like, I can actually sit down and write, or sit down and devote myself to a project without having to get up and go outside, or even not even that. But if I was in the middle of a project and, that thought would hit my mind, got to get a cigarette, and I would like, no, not yet. I still got to wait, or be on a plane and it's like, I want a cigarette, and just like amazing. But let's talk a little bit about some strategies for folks who might want to detach.
So I went through the same thing. I was a smoker, I had my first cigarette when I was probably 12 years old. I was a smoker from 15 until about, I'd say 3 years ago. I smoked all my life. Smoking meant a lot of different things for me at different points. And sometimes it was super cool. Like when I lived in Paris, right? We'd all be sitting outside cafes and having cigarettes and drinking espresso. And it was awesome then, right? But at a certain point, finding myself sort of shunned away from a crowd, and I'm in a alley somewhere behind a restaurant smoking because I don't want anybody to see me because it's not cool anymore. And then I come back to the table and everybody's like, oh God, Renee smells like cigarettes,
Right.
Right. And then my thought quality's low, right? Because I'm like, God, why are you still doing this? Like, nobody's doing this anymore and you're still smoking cigarettes, So really the the best way to detach from a pendulum, if you're in this sort of scenario, right, where you have realized you don't want to do something anymore, that it's not good for you, that, you know, you're just tired of it, whatever it is that you're feeling, is to bring awareness to it. Right? So if you feel like that, like I felt when I would come back to the table and I could tell I smelled like cigarettes, and people were like, oh, why she's, you know, she's in her 30s and she's still smoking. Like, I actually had somebody at some point say, oh, you haven't given that up yet? And I was like, fuck, you know? Yeah. I like, wow, you know, like I felt horrible. Right. So what I decided to do in that scenario and with others is I just paid attention to that new sensation, that this thing was ready to go. This thing was ready to leave me. And if you can pull awareness to whatever it is you're doing, whatever activity that it is, especially one that's undesirable, if you can pull awareness to it and in the moment remember that you don't want to do that thing anymore and it's time for you to move on, if you can keep yourself thinking like that, right? And not just go back to sleep and be like, oh, you know what, I'm just a smoker and that's just the way that it is, right? Going back to sleep, accepting it, right? Figuring out some way that you don't think about it anymore. If you can do the opposite and you can highlight that activity when you're in it and be like, yeah, this really sucks and this needs to go. It is only a matter of time. So I tried to quit smoking for years and years and years. There was different periods in my life. Sometimes I'd go maybe like a year without smoking, but I'd always come back to it, right? I'd always come back. Something would happen, you know, I'd have some trouble with business or something would happen and I'd be like, oh man, a cigarette sounds really good right now. Yeah, and I'd go smoke, you know, I'd go buy a pack of cigarettes. Then at a certain point, I started doing this thing where I just woke up every time I had a cigarette. I would wake up, I'd be like, how does this make me feel right now? How does this affect my thought quality? What sort of information does this layer on my physical being, right? Smelling like cigarettes or my teeth looking yellow or whatever undesirable qualities that it had. I would just focus on those. And when I started doing that, it was like seriously a matter of weeks until I just completely gave it up. And then the thought of having a cigarette was just like gross because I highlighted what it was actually doing to me, how it was actually making me feel. And like I said in the beginning of this talk, sometimes you can negotiate the deal with the pendulum, right? You can say, hey, well, maybe I could have one cigarette a week, right? But some pendulums, they just gotta go, right? They just gotta go. So if you're struggling with anything, alcohol, food, drugs, smoking, getting involved in drama, being on your phone too much on Instagram or whatever. Okay, so the part that I've really come to believe is you look at every single person you know in your life. Every single person you know has a vice of one kind or another, right? The grandpa that drinks a little too much, the best friend that still smokes, somebody that, you know, loves to eat sweets at night, somebody that, you know, maybe even like a perceived good pendulum, like, you know, a runner, right, that has to run 5 miles every day. Everybody has something that they like to fall back onto. It's like a weird glitch in the human mind. Some pendulum that they're involved with, be it a vice or something else, that they sort of, it gives them a little something. You just want to make sure, and it's okay to have your vices, right? But make sure they're not running your frequency, your resonating frequency down. That's the key, right? When I knew that I absolutely had to stop smoking cigarettes is when I would put a cigarette in my mouth, I would light it up, and my first thought to myself is, God, why are you still doing this? This is so bad for you, right? There, my frequency is lowered, and I would exist like that until I had my next cigarette, and it just kind of kept my frequency low, you know? So then it's got to go. If you can participate with your vice and be okay with it, then like Vadim says in the book, right? He actually talks about this. He goes, if you're a smoker and you're so ashamed with the fact that you're a smoker that you don't actually go out and buy cigarettes, you just look for butts and ashtrays, right? And you smoke cigarette butts, and it's disgusting, right? That's the wrong way of doing it. If you're going to have a vice, like if you're going to be a smoker, then be good at it, right? Like feel good about it. Have some respect around it, right? Like get yourself a super nice cigarette case and like a cigarette holder and turn it into a little art form for yourself. Feel good about it. If you can't get rid of the vice in your life, do it out in the open, be cool with it, have some pride in it, own it. Essentially, if you can't get rid of it. But don't be that guy or that girl that like is in denial with the fact that you're a smoker and you won't buy yourself a pack of cigarettes, but then you'll smoke half-smoked cigarettes that you find in an ashtray somewhere. That's the wrong way of doing it. Like either eradicate the thing or own it and do it well, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a lot of the little signs and stuff to kind of poke their head up. Cigarettes, for instance, like I went to a parade with my nephews and as soon as I got in the van, my little nephew Sebastian, we call him Seabass, he goes, Uncle Owen, no more cigarettes. And then Isaac and Sarah didn't hear what he said, so they asked him to repeat that like 3 more times. I heard him the first time and I was so mad. Yeah. I was pissed because I was like, you little shit, you know, like you are calling me out right now. The universe is speaking through you and I'm so upset right now, but you're exactly right. I know I need to quit and I had known and I still didn't for like 2 months, but then I got bronchitis and I was like, all right, that's it. I'm tapping out. But I've gotten a lot of like just signs from the universe about like, okay, it's time for you to switch gears here. You're gonna make a change. And a lot of times I'm so stubborn. I guess that's a sign of willpower, right? But no. Yeah. I'm so stubborn.
I'm gonna see this thing through. I am going to get cancer and die from lung cancer. You know.
But yeah, and just finally, the universe will kind of show me like, okay, well, you're going to make a change. And then a lot of times I've been stubborn about it. And then it just expedites the process when that happens. But that was kind of how like part of what happened to me. But that also started happening to me where I was becoming aware while I was smoking. And I was like, okay, even when I was smoking, I was not enjoying it. Like I was like, this is not, I'm not getting anything out of this. And I was completely aware of that. And even like somebody who I was explaining pendulums to one night, because I just found Transurfing, I was like so excited about it and just like bubbling over and talking to people and was talking to them. And they were like, well, cigarettes are a pendulum. And I was like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. You know, like, thanks for bringing that up. You know, I'm trying to give you cool information and you're just going to throw it right back in my face. Appreciate it, dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's funny. That's funny. So here's the cool thing about transurfing. When you understand these concepts, right? And you can then see your reality through this transurfing filter. It is like the ultimate self-awareness tool, right? Because you're just breaking each part of reality down, like you're breaking each component down, and you can see very, very clearly what everything is. You know, there's no more like I do not experience this anymore. Doing something or having done something and then be like, God, why did I just do that? Or why am I doing this? That does not happen for me anymore. I used to get like, I used to be pretty fiery with my boyfriends. I would get like heated and I would like yell. And, once I threw a fucking frying pan at somebody and almost hit him in the and I remember after I threw that frying pan, that one time I was like, big cast iron frying pan, the guy ducked and it hit the wall and it put a huge dent in the wall. And I remember thinking afterwards, God, why did I do that? That does not happen for me anymore. I mean, obviously the reason that I did that then is because a pendulum hooked me and I bought into it. Hook, line, and sinker. I gave it everything, including my rage, right? I gave it everything. It had full access to all my emotions with no stops or boundaries or anything like that. That does not happen to me at all anymore. Just because when a pendulum comes at me now, I can see it for what it is, and I get to choose how I interact. I'm not leaving it up to the pendulum to influence me, and then something happens, and afterwards I'm like, oh my God, that was really stupid. Why did I do that? I'm like, I'm in control. So that's the cool thing about transurfing is every little thing that you encounter, things that you don't even usually think about. You have more control in what energy you give to it, how you choose to respond, what you want to get out of it, right? You'll have a better ability at negotiating that deal so you can get more if you decide to continue to give, all sorts of things. But pendulums with transurfing, if there's one concept that really helped me sort of regulate, my energy, where I could have a lot more energy to further my own personal endeavors and get more things out of my reality that I want. It's me developing my skills with, negotiating with pendulums. That's
down. Awesome. Yeah. So just to do a little bit of recap, pendulums are good for you if you pick the right ones, the ones that benefit you or at least are giving you neutral, you're neutral with. They can also be very bad for you. We've learned as well. They can light you up or they can basically dominate you, but they start off as an idea, and then that idea gains momentum because more and more people believe in that idea, and the belief grows and grows and grows and grows until it affects a larger and larger number of people, and then those people start to share the same thinking. An outer pendulum has adherents, like the media we used as an example, that resonate at the same frequency, and it just continues to gain momentum and it snowballs. And whatever we're tuning into with our awareness, we are actually building and giving that thing energy. So the pendulum, the way to sort of negotiate with it is to decide, hey, I'm going to set aside a certain amount of time that I'm going to invest in this pendulum, whether or not, however it is beneficial for you. You get to decide if that's a time limit, like say 10 minutes, like when Renee said, well, I'm going to look at some mindless TMZ stuff while I sit here in the dentist's office. 10 minutes on that, but just be mindful of it. And then it's not nearly as destructive.
Yes.
So my energy, produces something for me whenever I choose to use my energy, but wherever our energy, i.e. attention, goes, that is going to build, and it's also the vibrations that are being tuned in to whatever channel that you're paying attention to. So the flower pot example, right? Like I've got this, and I've got X amount of water. That's all the water I have. That's all the awareness that I have. So I'm going to decide how I'm going to judiciously choose which flower pot that I'm putting my focus into.
Yes, absolutely. And remember, one more point that I didn't make, and I'll sum it up quickly. It doesn't matter if you feed a pendulum with positivity or negativity, you're still feeding it. So one of the quips that I like to use for this idea is Trump winning presidency, right? He saw this media pendulum, let's say the liberal media pendulum, and the people that thought that they were doing the right thing by trying to get Trump out of there, right? We can't have him. He's the devil. He's blah, blah, blah. And all that energy that they fed that pendulum, they thought they were doing the right thing, right? They thought that they were feeding something energy that was going to have an outcome that they desired. But here's the fun part. It doesn't matter what sort of energy you feed the pendulum. You're still feeding that pendulum. And in this specific example with Trump was a genius, actually. He knew that he could take this energy that the liberal media thought would get their desired outcome. He could take that and he could harvest it for his own intentional purpose, right? So that's the trick. You my dog's gonna bark here in a second. You have to acknowledge that a pendulum is a pendulum is a pendulum. There's no, that the pendulum does not understand quality of energy or variation of energy. All it understands is energy, right? In any direction. So if you think that you're going to pump something with positive energy and get a desired outcome because that's part of your belief system, something else could theoretically happen because the pendulum doesn't interpret type of energy or quality of energy. It just understands energy. So again, getting back to the vice, right? If you're feeling bad about what you're doing or even good about what you're doing, it doesn't matter in any direction because the pendulum just wants energy. It doesn't care what kind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. Yeah. It's just like if you hate cigarettes and you just complain about it all the time, and then you're going to wind up finding yourself around people who are smoking, or
absolutely. And that will be our next discussion. So, here we've gone over pendulums. Our next discussion that Owen and I will have will be defeating pendulums, and also importance, balancing forces, and excess potential. So that's where we actually get into the business of pendulums and how to properly eradicate them from our lives or ignore them, right? So yeah, that'll be a fun conversation, because like you're saying, Owen, if you hate cigarettes and you can't stand the smell, then when you're out walking around, all of a sudden lots of people are going to be smoking around you. It's because you're tuning into that frequency.
Right, negative or positive. If whatever it is that you hate or love, you're drawing to you.
Absolutely.
Well, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much for explaining that. And I think there's quite a bit of really good information in there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Everybody tune in for our next one, Defeating Pendulums. That'll be a fun one.
Awesome. Another good one.
Yeah, I can't wait.
That does it for the second installment of Transurf and Chill with Renee Garcia. I've been Bootsy Greenwood, will continue to be. Be sure to check out transurfing.us if you want to go deeper. Subscribe to TransurfingTV. Check out the Transurfing podcast. I mean, it's coming. We're really lighting it up, folks. We got some great guests coming up on that show, and really appreciate everybody for listening. Feel free to reach out. And stay tuned for lots more. If you want to support the production of this podcast, I'm doing it all out of my dining room. This used to be a dining room. Anyway, doing it all out of here, and you can go to Patreon and sponsor me that way. I'm making a bunch of videos on my channel as well, and be sure to buy the book, right? Read the book. Immerse yourself in this information if it speaks to you. If not, hey, find something that does. We'll see you guys next time. Enjoy this tune from Liberator.